Putin is war, as Nemtsov was prophetically saying in 2015. Putin is war. War will never end until he's in power. The war will end with him. They end together.
Now, Mikhail Fishman has long been one of Russia's leading independent journalists and critics of Putin's Kremlin. In 2022, he was officially designated a foreign agent by the Russian Ministry of Justice, and after his TV station was shut down, he was forced to leave to Amsterdam, where he's now continuing his journalistic work. Now he's written a new book, The Successor, in part a political biography of Boris Nemtsov, who was once thought to be Boris Yeltsin's successor, but when Vladimir Putin ended up in the job, became a marginalized figure and was eventually assassinated. Ultimately, though, Fishman's book is not just about Nemtsov, but about the Russia that might have been. And Mikhail joins me now. Hello. Welcome to Times Radio.
Hello. Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks very much for being with us. Look, at what point while writing this book did Nemtsov's story for you become a story about all of Russia rather than just about one man?
Right from the start. Right from the start. The story of Nemtsov actually embodies Russia's journey, and that what actually is the point of the book for me. Because first, yes, he is a type of leader that I thought we owe a biography to. But second, and importantly, his career, his life actually reflects Russia's path, because he came to rise as a promising star, as a star of Russian politics in late 80s, early 90s, when Soviet Union collapsed and new Russia came to life, and we all aspired for Russia join the club of civilized nations and to become a democracy and everything, and we had hopes, and that was the rise of Boris Nemtsov. In mid-90s, he was probably the most popular politician in Russia across the whole Russia, and Yeltsin saw him as his successor. But then, it didn't go as planned, and Putin came to power, and Nemtsov turned into opposition, and he fought for freedom until he was murdered in 2015. First, he was thrown out of the parliament, then he was harassed, and he was detained, and in 2015 he was murdered, and that reflects the whole what happened to us all.
Well, his story it's like a precursor to the Navalny story, but perhaps with the stakes being even higher. While this was happening to him, before he was assassinated, what was the view in Russia towards him? Was he adored? Was there some sort of hostility to him as a force of instability? What did people think of him?
It's a very good question, because Nemtsov was a very sort of living figure. He was a womanizer. He was known for his character, for his charisma, and he was at some point during late 2000s, I would say, he was not taken very seriously because Russian. Because back then it was, the price of oil started to rise, and Putin was in his full power and authority, and even across Russian journalists circles, I would say, he was not taken very seriously. But that changed in 2010s, and that changed even more after he was murdered. After he was murdered, instantly everyone realized that he was fighting for our freedom, that he was in the avant-garde of our fight for free Russia.
What does it do to political discourse, to how one feels as a political dissident when your leaders are being killed like this? It must be immensely chilling, immensely frightening.
It was the moment he was murdered was I would say a turning point back then. For everyone. It's like the kind of moments that, get imprinted in your memory when you forever know where you've been when you heard the news. That's this kind of moment. People cried. He was, when he was, few days before he was murdered, he was organizing a protest march against Putin and Putinism, and the war that started in Ukraine. which actually was the reason that he was killed. He was organizing that march together with Navalny, to which he brought the slogan "Putin is war," which proved right. And that march on March 1st, 2015, turned into a funeral procession, which gathered tens of thousands of people, and that is kind of a memory that will always stay with us.
And the fact that the Russian state now behaves like this routinely, is this a sign of Vladimir Putin's strength, of the Kremlin's strength, or is it a sign of their own deep fear and insecurity?
Well, back then, now almost 11 years ago, that just started happening. I mean, yes, human rights watchers and journalists had been killed before. Anna Politkovskaya was killed, Natalia Estemirova was murdered, and more. But never an opposition leader was murdered because of his views in the center of Moscow. That never happened. And not only opposition leader, but Boris Nemtsov, who actually made it to the top of the Russian government in the 90s and was considered.
He was credible, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was really an outstanding sort of case.
Yeah.
But since then, so many things changed. And since then, well, Navalny was murdered in his jail. And Putin started his large-scale invasion of Ukraine, which now took hundreds of thousands of lives.
Look, we've not got nearly as long as I'd like, but you've written, the book is called The Successor. Where does the way Russian, I want to say politics, although politics seems like too anodyne a word for it, the way the Russian system works today, where does that leave the hope of a successor? Where does a successor come from when there is no political dissent, when there is no active opposition, when opposition leaders cannot rise in prominence? How does this end?
That's a very good question that we don't have an answer to. When I was writing this book in Russian, which actually went to print 2 weeks before the war. Now this is an updated version, and it ends with the invasion of Ukraine. But in that book, in Russian book, I wrote that Nemtsov's values and leadership like his will be on demand soon. Well, now I'm not that certain. Now, in the foreword to this book, I write that I still believe that there is a way for better Russia, and values and that Nemtsov and then Navalny embodied will be still on demand, and things will change, and Russia will leave this vicious circle of violence and death it's spreading now. But I don't know when, and I don't know how, and I might not be around when it happens.
How significant will the end of the war be? When the war ends, does that what happens then? Does that lead to an expansion of Putin's power, or is that when you start seeing more dissent?
The war doesn't end until Putin is in power.
Right. Yeah.
Putin is war, as Nemtsov was prophetically saying in 2015. Putin is war. War will never end until he's in power. The war will end with him. They end together. After Putin, nobody knows what will happen. We of course aspire for everything. Things will get better. But what is this path? The point is also that I make the whole journey with Nemtsov. When New Russia started after dozens of years of socialism, Soviet socialism. And that was the starting point when we all had hopes, and it collapsed and it failed. That Russia failed. Now there will be, of course, a new starting point, but the conditions will be much harder than we had 30-something years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for being with us. That's Mikhail Fishman. I wish we'd had a lot longer. The book is The Successor. Mikhail, thanks very much indeed for being with us.
Thank you very much.